The plane trembled like a wounded bird at 30,000 feet, and somewhere between the low hum of the engines and the soft glow of the cabin lights, a single father slept in seat 8A, unaware that the next few minutes would drag his buried past into the open and force him to choose between the life he ran from and the life that depended on him. His head leaned toward the window, his arm curled protectively around a small backpack at his feet, the kind that carried children's drawings, emergency snacks, and memories too heavy to unpack. Outside, the sky looked calm, but inside the aircraft, something invisible had already begun to shift. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and quiet heroes who don't wear uniforms anymore, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel Acts That Matter, because stories like this remind us that humanity still rises when it matters most. He had boarded the plane exhausted, the kind of exhaustion that comes from years of doing everything alone. Being a single father was not a title he ever planned to wear, but life had handed it to him the day his wife never came back from a routine drive. Since then, mornings started before sunrise and ended long after his son fell asleep. Every decision was filtered through one question alone: will this keep my child safe? That question was why he had chosen a window seat close to the front, why he carried every document twice, and why he slept so lightly that even dreams felt like chores. Yet on this flight, fatigue finally won. His body shut down, unaware that fate had chosen this exact moment to test him. The flight had been routine at first. Families murmured softly, business travelers tapped on screens, and a young couple a few rows back argued in whispers about who would take the window next time. The air felt ordinary, almost boring, the way people like it when they're suspended miles above the ground. No one noticed when the turbulence started, just a gentle shake that could be blamed on weather. But the shaking grew uneven, sharper, and the engines sounded different, strained, like lungs fighting for air. Seatbelt lights blinked on. A ripple of unease passed through the cabin, subtle but unmistakable. For the men in seat 8A, sleep broke in fragments. His mind drifted through half-formed memories of flight simulators, instrument panels, warning lights, and training drills he had sworn he would never think about again. He had buried that life carefully, like a sealed box at the bottom of the ocean. After leaving the military, after everything that went wrong, he promised himself he would never sit in a cockpit again, never carry responsibility measured in lives. He wanted normal. He wanted quiet. He wanted to be just a father. And for years, he succeeded. Then the announcement came. The captain's voice was calm, almost too calm, the way professionals sound when they don't want panic to spread. The words floated through the cabin, careful and measured, explaining there was a technical issue, nothing to worry about, procedures underway. But then came the sentence that sliced through the air like a blade, the sentence no passenger ever expects to hear. The captain asked if there were any combat pilots on board. The cabin changed instantly. Breaths caught. Eyes widened. Hands tightened around armrests. Some people laughed nervously, assuming it was a strange joke, but the silence that followed confirmed it was not. The flight attendants exchanged looks that were meant to reassure and failed. Somewhere, a child began to cry, sensing fear long before understanding it. Seat 8A stirred. The man's eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first, then sharp with recognition. His body reacted before his mind caught up. Heart rate rising. Muscles tensing. The old instincts snapping awake like guard dogs released from chains. Combat pilot. The words echoed, heavy and undeniable. That was him, or at least who he used to be. Years ago, he had flown missions that never made the news, trusted machines at the edge of failure, and made decisions in seconds that haunted him for years. He had survived, but survival came at a cost. Friends lost. Guilt carried. A career ended quietly, without ceremony. He sat still, fighting the urge to disappear back into his seat. He thought of his son waiting at home, the promise he made never to chase danger again. He thought of the long nights explaining why mom wasn't coming back, of learning how to braid hair with clumsy fingers, of the small hand that always reached for his in the dark. He told himself someone else would stand up. Someone younger. Someone without so much to lose. But no one moved. Seconds stretched into something heavier. The turbulence grew worse, the plane dipping just enough to make fear crawl into people's throats. He felt the weight of eyes turning, not toward him specifically, but toward the idea of help. Toward hope. toward anyone willing to step forward. Inside him, two lives collided. The father who wanted safety and the pilot who understood exactly what was happening beyond that cockpit door. He knew what kind of failures required this kind of request. He knew what it meant when a captain reached beyond the crew. It meant time was running out. He closed his eyes for one breath, just one, and thought of his son's face when he laughed, the way it erased the world's noise. Then he stood. The movement felt unreal, like stepping into an old photograph. Heads turned. A flight attendant rushed forward, eyes wide with relief and disbelief. The man's voice came out steady, even though his chest felt tight. He explained who he was, briefly, without bravado. There was no pride left in that part of his life, only skill and responsibility. The flight attendant nodded and led him toward the cockpit, the narrow aisle suddenly feeling like a corridor between past and present. As the cockpit door opened, the smell of electronics and stress hit him instantly. The captain looked worn, hands tight on controls, sweat visible despite the cool air. Systems were failing in ways that didn't follow manuals cleanly. The plane wasn't falling yet, but it was drifting toward a place where options disappear. The man in seat 8A absorbed the scene in seconds, his training snapping fully into place. He didn't take over. He didn't command. He assisted, analyzed, suggested, the way professionals do when ego has no place. Minutes passed like hours. The plane shook violently, then steadied, then shook again. In the cabin, passengers whispered prayers, clutched loved ones, and stared at nothing. Some filmed. Some cried. Most waited. Inside the cockpit, the single father became something else again, not because he wanted to, but because lives demanded it. He remembered emergency procedures buried deep in muscle memory. He recognized patterns in the chaos. Slowly, painfully, the situation shifted from impossible to difficult. Then from difficult to survivable. Fuel balance stabilized. Control returned in fragments. A nearby airport appeared on radar like a lifeline. When the wheels finally touched the ground, the sound was not applause at first, but sobs. The kind that come when fear drains out all at once. Then the applause erupted, raw and uncoordinated, filling the cabin with something close to reverence. Strangers hugged. People laughed through tears. A child shouted that they were alive. The man who had slept in seat 8A returned quietly to his place, legs trembling now that the adrenaline faded. He did not raise his hands. He did not seek attention. He sat down and pressed his forehead to the window, breathing through the aftershock of what he had done and what it meant. A flight attendant thanked him with shaking hands. Passengers stared at him with gratitude that felt too big to accept. Later, as the plane sat safely on the tarmac, he thought again of his son. He imagined telling him about the delay, about how sometimes adults have to do scary things even when they're afraid. He imagined the hug waiting for him at home, the grounding weight of a small life that depended on him. He understood something then that had eluded him for years. He had not left that part of himself behind. He had simply been saving it for the moment it truly mattered. Before this story ends, take a moment and comment below what this moment made you feel, because your words keep stories like this alive and remind others they are not alone. As passengers disembarked, many thanked him, some in silence, some with tears, some with hands pressed together in wordless respect. He accepted it all gently, but his mind was already elsewhere, already moving forward. He walked out of the aircraft not as a hero returning to war, but as a father returning home, carrying the quiet knowledge that courage doesn't disappear when you walk away from danger. It waits, patient and heavy, until the world needs it again. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that ordinary people carry extraordinary strength, please like this video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe to Acts That Matter. Your engagement helps stories of compassion, bravery, and humanity reach the people who need them most.